If you or someone you know is in a relationship that involves any kind of abuse, whether it's emotional abuse, financial abuse, or physical abuse, you're not going to want to miss this episode. I've invited one of our favorite guests, Jennifer Jones, back for a second show today. Jennifer is the founder of Hagar's Heart, which is a nonprofit dedicated to helping victims of domestic abuse, or survivors, as they're also called, overcome and begin their new lives. And she's here today to talk with us about everything that Hager's Heart is doing and share a little bit of her own story as well. Hi, Jennifer.
Hey, I just can't imagine it was 5 years ago that we were sitting almost right here.
Yes, and you had just started taking action on a vision for Hager's Heart, which was something that you really felt passionate about. And now, 5 years later, tell us what's going on.
Wow. It's one of those things where we started during COVID, and even our mission was so different because I began an online group that people continued to grow. And now our mission is to support, educate, and empower domestic violence survivors, men or women, through self-care support, which started, as I was talked back then, as our ICU box, but has grown to we now serve over 8 agencies in 3 counties, and we have met and shared healthy ways to heal from emotional and verbal abuse in about 8,600 men, women that we've given ICU boxes to, and the events that we've shared. So I laugh when you ask that question because I do not believe we're done yet. There's a lot of things that will happen in the next 5 years. And I've shared, it's like we were a newborn 5 years ago, but now we're a toddler and we're still trying to figure it out.
Yes, and you will have an adolescent phase before too. So,
Oh, yes.
as every organization does. But I take me back. You're talking about the ICU boxes, and of course, when I hear ICU, the first thing I think about is intensive care unit. But it's not that type of ICU. Although that's not a bad way to think of it either. But it's the ICU boxes. And so, tell me about the origin of that. How did that come about?
So a lot of that, well, it is based on my story of healthy healing, my story of not being codependent, learning how to be beyond my divorce and the titles as I shared back then. But also, it was sharing from Hagar in the Bible for Genesis 16:13 in 2 of my roughest patches, which were going through a divorce because that was a major life change. And then I left education after 20 years. I read the verse Genesis 16:13 in both of those and heard 2 very different things. Um, 18, 19 years ago when I read it for the first time, I realized that I was important and that I did matter and I did have worth because I had lived so long through verbal abuse, emotional abuse, being told that I was never going to be good enough. When I hit it in 2018, where everybody is an educator in my family, you die an educator, you marry an educator, I heard that I was more than my titles. But the verse simply says, I now see the person who sees me. And that was something that ignited my healing, which became Hagar's Heart many, many years later, I should say.
Yeah. And then the boxes are a way just to share that message of love and being seen and being worthy. What is in the box?
Yeah. So the box is, or are things that, looking at things I used to heal in a healthy way. One of the biggest things I learned too is I thought if my kid's okay, then I'm okay. And I realized, really just in the last few years, that I needed to focus on me, even though he's a young adult now. And so that's kind of where the boxes came from. I had a tribe of women, best friends, my family, my mom, that surrounded me and would give me little tokens of writing positive messages, taking me to get a pedicure or a manicure, taking me out to eat. Sharing journaling was a help. And so inside this box, it's been funny in this journey for 5 years. People are like, oh, Hagar's Heart is toiletries. We are not toiletries. We are things that will hopefully invoke a way for women to say, oh, that felt good, or that felt better than me just sitting there and crying all day. Because I think when your whole world collides or breaks apart, that's kind of what you think you're supposed to do. And so our ICU box is filled with 17 items for healthy self care, and healthy healing is also what I call it. But the biggest two things we've heard back from, which are amazing, are the handwritten letter, of course. And then we've also, since we started with and shared with you, added a homemade bracelet. I guess Taylor Swift kind of helped us with that. But on that bracelet is a positive word, so that when the woman looks at that bracelet, she knows that she is good enough. I've also added a card because when you're in the middle of trauma, the card is personally for me and you really don't know what to do. So I've shared things like that. Look at the bracelet and know you're enough. Read this card, because that handwritten piece, it's really been funny. No one wanted to write. Everybody wanted to type at the beginning. Now we get letters in the mail even from other states all over. And it's been pretty amazing because the women will say, and the men will say, I can't believe somebody out there was thinking of me.
Yeah. And the things that go in the box are symbolic of that healthy healing. And what I love is that there's so many ways that you can contribute to the box, whether you want to write a letter or you want to make a bracelet or you have an organization that wants to sponsor a day of making these boxes. And you've had some pretty big organizations who have jumped on board this, yeah?
We have. And, I look back and in 2020, everybody was still required to get volunteer hours in. And it's very difficult to do that when you can't be with people. And so our boxes have made the corporate world. And we have had just really people all over DFW, Target, Walmart has supported us. Higginbotham has been one of our biggest supporters and fans. Of course, you at Hargrave Family Law, who, if it wasn't because of you, we are here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Well, I mean, because of you, we are here. But one of the things our team looks forward to every year at the holidays is packing the boxes where everybody kind of comes together and we fill up the boxes with a little pedicure, a little manicure set, soap. I know there's chocolates, the little journal, and then the bracelet and the letters. And it's really, really a powerful way for us as a community to pull together to support people. But then the gifts for the people who are entering shelters. Talk about a little bit about how they're distributed and what kind of feedback you've gotten from the recipients.
so that we will deliver monthly. And our monthly deliveries will, just depending on the time of year, because abuse comes in certain holidays and certain times, between 150 and 300. We have, in our 8 partner agencies, we have 11 emergency shelters, and then we have an agency who is One Safe Place in Tarrant County, where they don't have shelters, but they're like a one-stop shop. And so anyone comes in and they, for the first time, are telling their story, and at the end they receive a box. So what's been really neat, though, is we have shelters coming to us, and so they see the value. The need is great, with 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men going through this. It's a problem. I would love to be put out of business.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's not changing. It's only at times going up. And the one thing that I love is men are experiencing it just as much. It's actually, when we first began, it was I don't know how to say this, a lesser, it was 1 in 7 versus 1 in 4. And so I don't know how to say that, but it's gone up. And so, being partners with the Family Place, who has one of two men's shelters in the United States, has given us an opportunity to find what men need because men are very different than women.
Yes, yes. And in addition to the IC boxes, which you really rallied a lot of support around, you also have other events throughout the year. So, talk a little bit about what those events are and the meaning and purpose behind those events.
So, when we began in 2020, it was around Mother's Day. And, the thing that I've learned now is everybody was stuck together, whether you liked your family or you were an abusive family. It was hard. I, s- I stuck with that because it hit me in a way that I was always able to leave when I needed to or when I needed to set those boundaries. But these women couldn't. Yet at that point, I still hadn't taken on that title as survivor. So we started with the Women's Day brunch. Excuse me, it was Mother's Day. We took a brunch, we took flowers, the children gave to their moms, and we celebrated. What I've learned now, and we call it the Women's Day brunch in the spring, is sometimes the abuser is not the father of the children or the children have someplace to stay. And so we've named it Women's Day brunch. Sometimes women who don't have children will go to a shelter, but most what I've learned who they will go to friends' houses versus going into a shelter. And so that was our first, and we have met over hundreds of women and children. With the men, we did a barbecue for Father's Day. So, but our biggest one coming up is Santa Shack. And I think, again, like I shared earlier, my tribe that surrounded me made sure that he's my oldest, but at 2.5, he knew, he felt it, he wanted mommy to be happy. And so they always made sure he had a gift for Christmas or Mother's Day or
To give to you.
to give to me. Yes, to give to me. And what I realized in of course, at 2.5, it's very different than 30 something. But that's where Santa's Shack came. And so we are a little different in that this is for the children to shop for their mothers. And the family unit with a volunteer will spend 2 hours just having fun while we give the mothers or the women the gift of time. And this year, thanks to Thrive Cosmetics, they have given us a big grant. We've now become a big giving partner for them. But we will be pampering them with the makeup that has been given and kind of helping them feel special while their kids are shopping for them.
It's really amazing, and I've had the opportunity to participate in several of these Santa Shacks and the Women's Day brunch as well. And what I love at the Santa Shack is just to see the joy that the children have in picking a gift for their mom and then wrapping that gift and making a little card. And it's really touching to know that the children get to experience the joy of gift giving as well.
Absolutely. And, that's one of the things that really kind of started this all for me was I volunteered prior to Hagar's Heart ever forming, and people just love bringing things for children. And, there are certain ways that you set up, you buy for a family, it's like an angel tree. But then there are those people who are like, well, we're just collecting. They never tell the organization. And so multiple toys. And so when I was watching this as I was volunteering, I began to think, what is there for the moms? And I looked over and the donation was just in this tiny little corner. And it hurt me because I think part of the growth in it and healing is knowing that someone does care for you, or that a lot of times the reason that people will end up in an emergency shelter is because they are completely without any family, any friends, which makes me, when I think back, it's the isolation, it's the embarrassment, it's everything that goes into what I call the hidden part of domestic violence. Because the news just shows us most of the time, oh, well, the physical and the worst. And one of the things that I've learned is we didn't get to the worst just because they met them one day and decided to punch them or hurt them. We got to the worst because it becomes that vicious cycle of well, I'm never going to be enough. And it's okay. He can call me names, but he can't do that to my kids. And so that I think is why in our mission we have shared, or we share, that we partner with domestic violence organizations and agencies, but we focus specifically on the verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse, because even for me to this day, I'm remembering things from 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah. And, there's the saying that sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt. And
Hmm.
that's just not true.
Right.
Words carry a lot of weight.
Absolutely. Words matter. And, you say that. I look at having teen children and now adults, and there's still bullying that happens when you're 13, but we deal with it then. But then when you get older and you're an adult, I feel it changes a little differently. So it's really also been for me pouring into children who come volunteer with us, pouring into my own, that once is too many if you ever have a negative experience with words, and that you are enough.
Mhm.
Because even if you've had a beautiful life, we still need to know we are enough.
Yeah. And it's such an important message. Let's talk a little bit about how you've grown as you've been carrying out the mission of this organization. What things have you learned over the past 5 years
Um,
that you can share?
yeah, there's so many. And I know I haven't even touched the iceberg, but one of the things that has happened with Hagar's Heart is that we have had women who have felt alone come join us to volunteer, to be a part of it. Because one of the things that I wanted to do, and I always say that it took a very large 2x4 to really get to me, um, is that I always want to help someone not go through as much as I did. Because I had resources, I had degrees, I had a job, I thought that disqualified me as a domestic violence survivor. What I have learned, and want everyone to hear, is that you don't have to leave and go to a shelter, because that's what I thought. There are outreach services at every one of our agencies, and you never have to go into a shelter or a temporary housing unless that's your only need, or only option, I should say. Um, so that's been really amazing. Every event that we do, it just affirms that it is real. It does happen. I've been able to work through what my self care looks like, because I can preach it really well. Um, but really, just in the last year, I've got to live it if I'm going to do it well. We have been able to educate, oh gosh, thousands of people that it is more than a black eye. And I think the more we share that, the hope is somebody will step in. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Is I look at it, it was like 3 months in, and we were just starting with our uh, second and third shelter when I was here. And just the need, the desire to understand, but also to help, and to tell people, check on your neighbor. That is what I feel has been so important, because we live in a world that says, oh, that's not my business, I'm going to stay out.
Mhm.
I think, the one thing that we discussed, of course, when It Ends With Us came out last year, that was a movie that was supposed to bring things to light. And yeah, I mean, there's some, yeah. Um, and watching it as a survivor, it pulled out a lot for me, triggers, as we call them. But it also told me that through my therapy, which I do weekly, and I'm worth it, that those are things that I've had a lot of women in shelter, out of shelter, who have asked, do the triggers, does it ever get better? And I have to say, the triggers will always stay, because it was part of who I am, who we are. But the way you deal with it will make it better. And I think that's also, so going back to that movie, though, is that I had a choice. I had a choice when I watched that movie to just stay stuck in everything I was told, or to do something about it. So what we do as Hager's Heart is really educate, especially during October with Domestic Violence Awareness Month, because it's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is just important. People don't know that it's also that. And so we spend a lot of time. We'll be showing the movie No Ordinary Love by a local producer Tracy Rector on, well, September something and October
30th.
2nd, 30th. Yes. Yeah. So 30th will be in Dallas. But I think the biggest thing is, and the question that I've had a really hard time answering to perfection or almost perfection, is why did you stay? And so I've realized people think it's real easy to get out. It's real easy to just find a place. And I was able to find a place. I left and I came back when it was safe, but it didn't change anything. And having people watch a survivor go through, because this one's about spiritual abuse, and then a police officer, woman, wife married to a policeman, and what happens and transpires. So going back to the movie, what I love is that we have a panel like you, law enforcement. We have someone who is a CEO of an organization we partner with. We have counselors there to then take the movie and share on the legal side, on the other side, why and obstacles and things that they will endure or have to endure, and why at least 7 times many of them go back.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's, we can talk a lot about the fact that it is very hard to leave a broken relationship for a whole host of reasons. One of which being there's not always a safety net there to help the person. But also I think it's that it comes down to that self-worth. And until somebody feels worthy of being treated better, until they feel worthy of, a healthier relationship, until they feel worthy of peace in their home, that chaotic storm that they're living in is sort of their normal.
Correct.
And the anecdote is to help people understand their worth in this world, which is why I love the work that you're doing and why we're committed to partnering with Hagar's Heart for events like the upcoming movie on September 30th. And Tracy Rector also happens to be the mother of one of our associates, attorney Hannah Rector. So we're all in and invested in this and invested in sharing the message. Right? Because, looking to a legal system that is not always a justice system, we do our best, but oftentimes it's very broken and doesn't give the voice that needs to be given to people, to the unfairness, the injustice that happens in really broken relationships. But that work is still, even if a judge isn't gonna, give you an award that makes it all better, because the truth is there just isn't, right? There's no amount of money that will make all that pain and suffering better. But at least you can begin to rebuild your life.
Yeah. And I think too, as you said, that it struck a chord. In the end, we as the victim turned survivor feel like we got the brunt, and why is our abuser off scot-free? But I think that's also because of the emotional scars and damages that we have to release and become our own person before we will ever heal.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for me, which doesn't necessarily come across this way to my abuser, is I forgave him. And forgiveness was for me, not for him. And this brings me to what we were talking about earlier with hope. I stayed because I had hope he was going to change. What
Jennifer.
Yes.
Anytime you have hope that something's going to change, it's not hope, right?
Yeah. And I've been graciously told, and that's the thing. I am a survivor, but I am not an expert on domestic violence. I can just share my stories and my hope. And I think even beyond hope, it is hoping that change would happen, giving suggestions for that change to happen, really, which really turned into arguments or starting whatever. And
by the way, sacrificing yourself,
right,
and living in pain and suffering yourself, thinking that change would happen.
Right. Well, and like you said earlier, it just becomes your normal. And, now that I was given a second chance almost 15 years ago, I see what a marriage is supposed to look like, or a healthy relationship. And of course, I would love to say we are perfect and never fight over anything and agree on everything. But there's a difference with how we deal with things that we don't agree on.
Yeah.
And I don't worry every time, are we going to get a divorce? Which at the beginning, I would ask him, maybe we should just get a divorce. But I think that's what's gotten me here and the millions of survivors is hope. While I thought it was for someone else, it was me that I hoped for a life that I could provide to my child, now children, and make sure that they knew the world was going to be hard, but that they had a choice in it too.
So I just want to illustrate to drive home the contrast between hoping that somebody is going to change. And when you're living in that arena, that is, you're giving up so much of yourself trying to make somebody into something that they're simply not, right?
Yep.
We're not accepting the truth of who they are versus hoping for a better future for yourself, putting your hope in yourself and your own growth. And over that, you have complete control. And what a beautiful life you're living.
Yeah, it is. And I think, as I speak with survivors, whether in shelter, out of shelter, people who see us out and come and talk to us for their hope, it's sharing. Like I said earlier, I didn't have anybody because it's also generational, right? Our generation was very much, we don't talk about it. Everybody, if you have a problem, it's under the table. And then going back to our parents and the, stereotypes that they had, that I'm an open book, because that's the only way we can at least put a dent in being treated and feeling worthy of something.
Yeah, it's to know you're not alone, right? That beats the isolation that happens in abusive relationships where they make you feel like you're alone and there's shame, and there's no shame.
Nope.
There's an amazing group to connect with, and you begin your own journey of healing and find your own worth.
Absolutely.
What I like to do when we end our discussion is to leave people with a message of hope. So I want you to think of the person you were those 19 years ago in that moment where you had a mistaken understanding of hope. What message of hope do you have for that person?
It's funny. I looked back on what we did however many years ago, and what I want to say is, we, as a person, as an individual, I get to live my life on my terms. I get to make decisions that are okay, whether somebody else thinks they are or they aren't. I'm supported in ways that I never thought would ever happen. And I think that's what Hagar's Heart has taught me, is when I'm now an executive director worrying about where is this going to come from? Where is this? We are blessed immensely by people, by volunteers, by donations, whatever it is. And I think that's the hardest thing, is taking the leap of faith, whether it's financial abuse, whether it's spiritual, physical, whatever. That the leap of faith may be hard at first, but I can't tell you the blessings that come along with it. So that's what I would say, is don't be afraid to make the leap of faith.
I love that. That's a great message. So if you or someone you know is in a situation where you're in a broken relationship, please share this video with them and look up Hagar's Heart. Learn more about Hagar's Heart. Even if you've just been moved by what Jennifer's been talking about today, there's so many ways to give and make a difference. And we thank you for joining us today and hope you'll stay tuned for future episodes. Thank you.